What's going on, everyone? Welcome to GDT Live, presented by the Game Day Terps podcast. My name's Jaden Camo. Alongside me, Colton Davies. As always, we're back into the swing of things. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Monday, it was an off episode. Yesterday, there was no live show, but Riley was live with a free agency show on our YouTube, so go check that out. But today, we've got Mario Tirabassi from CHCO Sports Chicago and Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff coming on to chat some drafts, some free agency, and some Chicago Blackhawks with Mario Tirabassi, something that we've been getting into here, Colton, a little bit. So are we excited for today? You're muted.
I was muted. I'm looking forward to it. No, it's gonna be fun. I think what Chicago did at the draft was very exciting, very good draft class, and I think Mario can attest to that. But yeah, without further ado, let's bring him on and let's get chatting about Chicago.
Mario, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's start with that third overall pick with Anton Frondell. What did you make of the pick, and were you shocked at all that he was still there, considering the talk about him going second to San Jose?
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily shocked. I think it was getting enticing to want to believe that the smoke around Frondell going number 2 to the Sharks was actually legitimate. A lot of the top insiders were talking about it, but even still, I think a lot of people were reserving their expectations that it would pan out that way. And lo and behold, as I think a lot of people expected, it was going to go Schaefer and Misa, and leave Anton Frondell right there for the Blackhawks. And I like the pick. I think it's a guy that you hear comparisons to Anton Lundell and Alexander Barkov, and those guys are Stanley Cup champions. Barkov's one of the best in the league, and yeah, those are lofty expectations. But I think somewhere in between those two guys, I think you're landing as a solid player. And the Hawks, they still have holes all over their prospect system. I think they're doing a better job now as they've gone through 4 drafts under Kyle Davidson to kind of restock what was left behind from the Stan Bowman era and get themselves a prospect pool that's one of the best in the league. So you have Frondell at the top of it now, and I think with him and Lev Shinov, you can have a debate on who's their top prospect, but either way, you have someone that either is a top pair defenseman or has the opportunity and ability to play as a top line wing, or maybe a really great number 2 center.
Obviously, there's guys like Vaclav Nestor still, who got picked at 25 overall. But the next guy that kind of obviously shocked everyone, well, I shouldn't say shocked everyone, but kind of piqued everyone's interest, was Mason West. Obviously, the double threat, if you want to call it that. What have you heard about Mason West, and what do you like about the kid?
I mean, as we got closer to the draft, his story was really interesting to me. Blackhawks last year in the 2024 draft took a kid named AJ Spellacy, who gave up his football days to focus solely on hockey as a 16-year-old, and he's made huge steps forward in his hockey career and his hockey development. And he was a guy that through high school was looking to play Division I football. So Mason West, I think it's different when it's a quarterback who's getting Division I offers, and it's a guy that I think has a ton of potential. I think the read on him is that he's a really good kid. Kyle Davidson has definitely done a lot of work to make sure that high character young guys are part of their scouting pool and the guys that they pick. So I think with West, it was really intriguing just to hear his story and hear about the raw athleticism, the raw potential upside that he has. I think with a guy that's committed to playing in the USHL once his football season is over in high school, to already committing to Michigan State, one of the best programs in college hockey, that's, to me, that's a big indicator that, yeah, he is going to go and figure out what his career can be in hockey. And it felt like some team was going to take the gamble on Mason West, whether it was going to be early second round or into the first round. And I kept saying, as we got through the month of June, why not the Blackhawks? They need big forwards. They need guys that can move and have really good creativity and a scoring threat while also being physical. And it checked all the boxes of a player that the Hawks needed in their system. And throughout their entire draft class, they went with big guys who could move. So Davidson definitely needed to check that box, and he did.
Talking about all these guys that are kind of bigger stature, I noticed that the first 5 guys that the Blackhawks picked, all the way down to Julius Sumpf, were over 6 feet tall. Do you think size kind of was a determining factor here this year?
Well, I think when you look at who they had in their system, especially at the top of it for forwards, were small guys. Bedard's not a big guy. He's 5'10", 5'11". Oliver Moore's 5'11". Frank Nazar's 5'10", maybe. Nick Lardis is 5'11". So you don't really have a lot of those high skill forwards or guys that you project to play in your top 9, top 6 with too much size. So, last year they got 3 first-round picks. 2 of them were forwards, Sasha Boisvert and Marek Van Acker, decent size. This year they went with big guys at every pick. Even the goaltender they picked in the 7th round is pretty big. So I think Davidson used this draft to address that, while not necessarily just going for size sake. You look at the guys they picked besides Frondell, who even he has incredible, potential, but Neshersil and West and Bame, like these are guys that when they hit their ceilings, I know it's going to probably take longer than some other guys that might have been available, but when they hit their ceilings, you'd imagine that those ceiling is going to be higher than some of those guys that you maybe thought were a little bit further down their development path. So it's more gamble picks, but I think it's still, you're looking at players that if they hit where they're supposed to, they're playing in your top 9 and your top 6. Mm-hmm. And the forwards group, they're playing alongside, hopefully alongside guys like Lardis and Moore and Bedard and Nazar. And, that size issue, quote unquote, isn't really a thing at that point.
Let's talk a little bit about Nathan Bame just for a sec. I work for the Kamloops Blazers, as I told you in a DM, so I've got to know this kid quite well. And you're talking about a 6'2", 205-pound forward who, he said to me earlier this year that he thinks one of his underrated traits is his physicality. And then talking with scouts said he needed to do a little bit more with his physicality due to his size. And I think that's something he's going to work towards this summer. But we're talking about a kid who scored 31 goals. He's got a lethal shot, like an NHL release. What did you make of the pick of Bame? And have you had a chance to kind of take a look at his highlights or anything like that?
Yeah, I've had a little bit of time to see what he did this season in the WHL. And I think, looking at those highlights, looking at, the player profile of him, like he fits, like I said, like he fits something that the Blackhawks needed. And, I think when you have a guy that has the frame and the measurables that he does, and then you say, okay, go out there and use it more, like that takes time to understand that. A lot of these guys still have to physically mature and you get used to playing with that size. And, especially when you're in juniors, you're amongst your peers, you have to be able to, if you're going to be that big and you want to have that be part of your game, that edge and that physicality, to get it to translate to the NHL, like you will have to bully basically your peers so that you can withstand and be able to hang when you get to the professional ranks, whether it's the AHL or NHL. Like those are men, and those are tough leagues to play in. So I think if he can start to leverage that physicality a little bit more, like he's already a really dynamic offensively player, and he's got a profile that I think the Blackhawks really need, which is a guy who can get to the middle of the ice, guys that can attack to where the most dangerous offensive spots are. And if they get more guys that have that mentality and have that as just ingrained in their game, they don't get to the NHL and then you have to teach them, like, no, go to the net, go to the center of the ice, don't play on the perimeter. That's just going to benefit them. So I like the trajectory he could go on.
Going down the
and
list.
He's.
Oh, sorry, Colton, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in a series of texts I exchanged with him over the weekend, he is very excited to be a Chicago Blackhawk. So I think that's a solid pick.
Going down the list of names here, Mario, there's a few guys usually I would look at a draft class from a team and you start getting down the list and the names wouldn't really be as relevant, or I wouldn't really have picked up on as many of the names, but you get down to like their 98th pick, Julius Sumpf, and that's still a guy that, played on the first line in Moncton alongside Caleb Desnoyers for the whole season. He put up pretty good points. He played at the World Juniors. What do you think Chicago's scouting crew is doing so well that's able to find all these guys in the later rounds?
Well, I mean, we'll see what he ends up being. But I think it's I think that kind of pick where, it's a guy that's been passed over twice. He's 20 years old and, coming out of junior, like he'll go to Providence College and play in college, which I think is a good route rather than necessarily letting him go into the AHL and figuring out that way. And that might just not be a spot he needs to be in right now. So I think what they're trying to do with a pick like this is find a guy who's a little bit further down that path so that you're not just loaded with 18 and 19-year-olds. Like maybe you could get a player like him who's, had success at the junior level. You get him to a good program in college, plays maybe a year or two, and then let's say he's 22 years old and he's on the same timeline of a guy that's 20, but he's 2 years ahead. And it's kind of a comparison that we've had discussions around between Bedard and Nazar. It's like, well, Nazar's two years older than Connor Bedard, and so but Bedard's had 2 years in the NHL, whereas Nazar's had just over half a season. So it's like, when we get enamored with what Nazar's doing, and some people start being like, oh, he's better than Bedard. It's like, well, he's older. So, those physical tools are a little bit different from a guy at 22 than a guy who's 20. So I think maybe they're making that play with that pick with Sumpf where, he's ahead of other guys that they would have been looking at in the draft. And they'd rather say, well, if we can fast track the progression of this guy, then why not? We don't have to necessarily wait 4 years before we're even having a conversation about him. It could be 2.
Well, just to stick on this kind of trajectory, something that I saw on your Twitter was that Jackson Pridham, or actually wasn't on your Twitter, it was on the Hockey Writers. I saw that Jackson Pridham isn't actually going to be returning, or not going to go to BU, and he will be returning to Kitchener next year. It's kind of the first player that we've seen say, like, I've committed, but not going to college. What do you make of that? And do you think Pridham will do well next year?
I think so. I think he had a really good season in Kitchener. It was a lot of progression for him throughout the year. He went from the BCHL to the OHL. So that's a step up in competition. And then, once he got to Kitchener, he was one of the best players that they had on the team. So I was a little surprised to see that he wasn't going to go to Boston. And that's one of the best programs in all of college hockey. And, the Hawks have had some recent players go through that program and, have some success in developing. So he would have been teammates with Sasha Boisvert, which would have been a lot of fun for Hawks fans. But I sounded like when he talked with the media yesterday, he was asked about it and told us, like, it's just kind of a better setup for me to get to the NHL faster, which has kind of like been the opposite trend that we've seen with some of these guys going from, the Canadian junior leagues to college. But I guess it seems like the faster track for him to getting, signed by the Blackhawks and getting to the NHL is to excel with Kitchener. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I think, like, these guys, some leagues just fit guys better than others. And if you're looking to maximize a guy like Jack Pridham, like, 3rd round pick, he's got, some good amenities at his fingertips with his dad having the job at the Maple Leafs. So I think he's a guy that is still going to take some steps before he's really, looking at the pro game and the NHL game. But, based off of what he did last year in the OHL, no reason to, put him somewhere that he may not be as comfortable. Keep him in the OHL, let him, continue to develop there. Nothing wrong with that.
What do you rate this draft class in terms of, compared to maybe last year or the year before even? You don't have to compare them, but what would you rate this on, like an A+ to F- rating? I
mean, it's hard to say. But I think initial reactions, I would be comfortable saying like B+. Like I think it was a good draft. I think it was, you didn't have a ton of guys that you can say, oh, in 2 years they're going to be in the NHL. Like, you get 3 first-round picks, like, you think like, oh, they're going to be fast-tracked. But 2 of their 3 are at least 2 years away from even like thinking about the next step beyond playing in college. So it's going to be a longer runway with this draft class. So I think conservatively, I'd say like a B plus. I think they Davidson hit the size a lot. The guys that have like the high offensive upside, along with being big, like they're projects. But if they hit, like you're talking about getting 3 or 4 guys that you could put into your top 6 or top 9 in those conversations down the road and say like these are viable options. And with Frondell, like there is what's to say that he doesn't impress the Hawks in training camp to the tune of him making the team. Like he has said, like, that's my goal. Like, I want to make the NHL this season. And everyone's going to say that, of course, but he's a guy that actually, played against men last year in Sweden and, has the size and, it's still a raw tool set that he's going to have to figure out once those, he takes a step up in competition. But he could be a guy that like could play in the NHL this season. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but that all has to play out. But I did feel good coming away from the draft. So yeah, B plus is good in my book.
Free agency just passed, and obviously contract talks are in the air. I saw a video of Kyle Davidson speaking to the media about Connor Bedard, saying that Bedard said he wants to stay in Chicago and that's his plan. What do you think a future contract could look like for Bedard? Just like in a range, I guess I would say.
I mean, the salary cap's going up again. So, I mean, I really, it's hard to really pinpoint that. I think, a lot of people were being cheeky and say, 9.8 million for 8 years and whatnot. But I don't know. I think it's going to be very interesting because his best interest is play this season out. Let your dollar value increase as much as possible. Like, you're already going to get a lot of money put in front of you because you are the face of the franchise and you're the best player in the organization moving forward. You're what everyone's banking on. So you're going to get a lot of money. But like, if he comes out in year 3 and hits the benchmarks that everyone's hoping for him to be, like point per game player, maybe a little bit more than that, 30 goal scorers. Like, if he's hitting those things, then you look at it and you're like, okay, we're not just paying for potential upside. Like, we're paying for a guy that's actually like now hitting those points of like, this is what we expected him to be. So it benefits him to wait. But I mean, with the salary cap going up, with seeing some of the dollars that were handed out through free agency and what guys signed for, like, I got to imagine he's going to be in the 10 million.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does a max 8-year deal. Like, it's not going to be a bridge deal where it's like 2-3 years, but I don't know. Maybe if he goes the full 8, that'd be great. I think the Blackhawks would want that, obviously, but he might be a guy that, goes 5 or 6 or 7, just under the maximum. But I think all Hawks fans would want, the 8 years. They want the security, and maybe it gets done that way. But I got to imagine that if he has the season a lot of people are expecting, he's going to be in the 10 range, maybe even more.
One more for me before we let you go, Mario. I saw that Kyle Davidson said to Emily Kaplan, hop on the ride now, because in the end, it will be worth it. Do you think yourself that if Hawks fans stick around in a couple of years, once this team gets rolling, they'll be a competitor and they'll be a contender?
I still believe that. Yeah, it's still pinned to the top of my Twitter page, so I still believe it. I think it's a long journey. Rebuilds aren't done in 1 to 2 years, and I think a lot of Blackhawks fans see the experience that we all had 10 to 15 years ago and want to snap our fingers and get right back to that. But it's a little bit harder than that, especially given the way that the organization was going once Kyle Davidson took over. They didn't have a good prospect pool. They had some good players, but not guys that were going to get you over the top. So they had to restart things. And to put it in perspective, I was kind of thinking about this a couple of days ago, where the Hawks are now was kind of like 2 years before Kane and Tays arrived in Chicago, where you had Patrick Sharp on the roster. You had, Nicholas Hjalmarsson and Dustin Byfuglien were in the organization. Corey Crawford was in the organization. And you had Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith, who were both under 20, 23, 22 years old, just getting their legs in the NHL. Like, it feels like the Hawks right now are at that point of, previous Hawks teams that eventually found success. So it'll still take some time. It's just, you kind of got your marquee players first, rather than, when that team was built, it got, they got Kane and Tays 06, 07. Whereas you get Bedard and Levshunov and Nazar and all these guys at the start, and then you kind of build up from there. So no, I still think there's a lot of time to, have these guys get to the NHL, figure out their games. It's going to test people's patience for sure. But I think this season going forward, knowing Kyle Davidson's doing almost nothing in free agency to add anybody to the roster, that they're going to be young, they're going to go through some growing pains, but this is the season where we'll kind of get that first sight of what has this rebuild been for. And I think we're going to see steps taken from Bedard, steps taken from Nazar would be amazing. Alex Vlasic's turned into a really solid defenseman. We'll see if Artem Levshunov is a full-time NHLer. We'll see if Sam Renzel is a full-time NHLer, and what are they at the NHL level? Like, I think there's still definitely a lot to figure out, but the signs for these young guys are still positive. So it might not translate to wins this year, but it'll at least give you a glimpse of what this first wave of this rebuild has actually been for.
That's a fantastic analysis. I think we got a couple of Chicago Blackhawks fans in the comments who are agreeing with you nonetheless. Mario, thank you so much for joining us today and coming on and giving us a bit of a breakdown of the draft. We'd love to have you back on next season once things obviously get rolling. But you can tell our viewers where everybody can go find your work.
Yeah, thanks for having me on anytime, guys. You can find my work at allchgo.com. That's for CHGO Sports. You can follow myself and Jay Zawoski. We host the Blackhawks podcast at CHGO_Blackhawks on Twitter. It's called the CHGO Blackhawks podcast. My Twitter handle is at Mario_Tirabassi. All the work and random junk that I've put out on the internet can be found there. So again, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome, Mario. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Well, Colton, great episode with Mario. Learned a little bit more about the Blackhawks and their draft class. What a draft class it was, actually. Like I said, it's not very often you get down to the 98th overall pick and it's a first liner on a QMJHL winning franchise, right? So a great draft class this year for the Blackhawks, I think. Colton's frozen, so that's all right. We'll drop Colton and we'll see what's going on. Let him get his Wi-Fi figured out here. Colton, you just hop back in when you're ready. He just texted me, said his computer crashed. So Colton will be back in. That seems like is a great time. Send it to a commercial break. We will be right back after this.
Looking for a new way to quench your thirst? Game Day Tarps is now an official Quench affiliate. Head on over to quench.ca/GameDayTarpsPodcast and use our code GameDayTarpsPodcast, all caps, all one word, for 15% off your total order. Stay cool this summer with the #1 sports drink on the market. Stay quenched.
Is the off-season bumming you out?
Yeah.
Do you wish you had more hockey content to consume?
Yeah.
Well, head on over to patreon.com/GameDayTarps and check out all the exclusive content we have to offer. Behind the scenes videos, in-depth analysis, and so much more. Select a membership tier and enjoy the content made only for you. Only at patreon.com/GameDayTarps.
So if anybody knows any companies out there needing commercial or ad read guys, let them know. Colton, welcome back. It's nice to see that your computer is working with you now and being cooperative. So it's always great to have you back here. Oh, you're still a robot. Oh, goodness.
I think we're good.
All right, yeah. We're getting there. Let's talk about the CHL import draft. This happened this morning. All CHL franchises are now allowed to hold 3 import players instead of the 2 import players that they were allowed to hold before. I am going to drop you, Colton, just until your Wi-Fi. Oh, maybe you're better. You're better. All right. So yes, all CHL teams are now allowed to hold 3 import players. Colton, the Kamloops Blazers and the Halifax Mooseheads both made some moves today. Our homer teams. Why don't I kick it off with Halifax's first round selection? They picked a Russian. They said no more Swiss guys. Enough of the Timo Meyer. Enough of the Attilio Biasca. Enough of the Nico Hischier. We want a Russian. So Halifax picked a Russian. Oleg gonna butcher that last name. So Kulibiakin, I believe. But yeah, a great pick for Halifax in the first round. And then in the second round, they picked a 5'11" Finn from, I believe he was from the U20 Liga League. So that's a great pick for Halifax. A couple of them playing alongside Carlos Handel, who was just picked by Montreal in the 7th round, or in the 6th round, my bad. So yeah, great all-around season coming up, I think, for the Mooseheads. Colton, what do you got over there for Kamloops? What noise did they make this morning?
They took a Latvian goaltender. Just got to pull up his name here for a quick second, as I have forgotten what it was. But he played for Latvia at the under-18s and seemed to impress there enough that, the Blazers took a shot on him here in the draft. And then Kamloops drafted Petr Tomek from Czechia, so a forward as well. So yeah, a couple nice selections. They already have Pete Sahicki, so the third import slot is already booked up.
All right, Colton. Well, since your internet is bugging a little bit, why don't we get right into it and let's welcome Steven on. He looks like he's enjoying some sun. He's got the shades on. Why don't we bring him on? Steven, how's it going? It looks like you're outside enjoying some sun. Where are you at?
Just visiting my parents for today. We're my dad and I go-kart race tonight, so we're again just kind of trying to cut the drive down to the track, and hopefully going to win. Hopefully going to go 1-2. Got to thank all my sponsors. Nobody, and let's see how it goes.
Well, it seems like you might be a multi-sport athlete here. You went from being a ball hockey goaltender to now a go-kart driver. Look at you go.
Yeah, I go-kart raced on and off since I was a young kid, and it's awesome. Like, it's at a competitive league. We got something like 50 people, and last I checked, I was first place in points. So let's try to build that lead up a bit more.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, obviously, the draft just went by, free agency as well, the CHL import draft as well this morning. There's lots to talk about, but let's kick it back to the NHL draft. Obviously, lots of stuff in the first round. Matthew Schaefer went first. Michael Misa went second, but Anton Frondel jumping up to that 3rd overall pick. Did you see Anton Frondel going that high?
Yeah, the rumors kind of started about 2-ish weeks ago, and even before that, you could kind of see, like, I understood the fit. Like, Porter, if I was Chicago, I would have taken Porter Martone. I like that idea. Like, it felt like the right fit. But when it comes to what the Blackhawks were looking for, a center of size, that's something they really lacked. And with Frondel, he can do that. He can also play the wing, which maybe gives him some options on the power play. And it's he's definitely not my 3rd favorite player in the draft, but I understand the pick, and I think it's still a very good pick.
Something that Colton and I actually talked a little bit about was the movement of picks in the first round. Didn't see a whole lot of that other than the Pittsburgh moving theirs. Montreal obviously moved theirs ahead of the draft. What do you think of them waiting for the draft, still having the Montreal Canadiens logo up, and then announcing the draft 8 hours later once everyone already knew?
Yeah, at that point, it was just for show. It's like at first like, oh, like interesting. Like, was there a hiccup? It's like, no. They were just waiting for the show. And hey, I'm all for it, given how kind of brutal it was to watch some of that draft.
Yeah, we were doing a little live show. It was 2 hours and 40 minutes, and we were only at like the 25th pick, so it was a little bit long. I'll say that.
Yeah, it was like in person. Day one was rough. Day two, I almost wanted to be a little longer. Because I had like when the time the draft was over, I had like 8 hours to kill before my flight. The other thing was trying to get all the breakdown of every team's draft. It took a long time, so I'd say it worked out okay on day two, but day one, man, that was tough. Like getting outside where the draft started at 4:00 local time, we get out and it's completely dark. I'm like, this sucks. This stinks.
Well, how was the time in LA? Obviously,
I think I'm working.
Oh yeah, you're good. You're good, Colton. Go ahead.
We're good now? Okay, Steven, I wanted to ask you, who was your biggest surprise of the draft?
I believe I see your cat trying to eat some. Does that look like pop? It looks like it should eat like popcorn or something in the back.
I don't know what.
I gotta love it. Biggest surprise of the draft? Good question. Honestly, it kind of felt more status quo. There was no like real shocking move. Like I thought Benjamin Kendall going when he did as early was a bit of surprise, but even then, like I understood there was teams that were interested in him around the top 10. So I don't know. It didn't really feel like there was anything too crazy this year. It was kind of status quo, and like maybe Philip Ekberg going 7th round. I thought like at least the 5th round, but at the same time, I get the concerns there as a pretty small player.
What did you make of Mason West getting drafted, and how do you feel about his projection moving forward?
With West, a lot of teams were very interested in him. It sounded like if there were going to be any trades in the first round, it'd be to try and go and get him. So I think that was a good pick. Like with him, he's obviously he's got the size of 6'6". He's got the multi-sport athlete, and he's like just a massive, incredible athlete. Like no question about it. It'll be interesting though to see, he didn't want to quit playing football for this coming season because he made a commitment to his teammates. Interesting, but will his NHL team say otherwise? I think that's the question there. But he's said he's fully committed to hockey. Like this is a guy that the story goes like he didn't even know it was his draft year halfway through the year. He had no idea he was draft eligible this year. So, and I don't think anyone knew who he was halfway through the season either. So this has been a very quick rise. But you see the skill set, you see the size. There's a lot to like.
You talk about no one really knowing who he was halfway through the year, myself included. That kind of goes to show how big of a stage the Minnesota high schools, like the state hockey tournament is. Obviously, they packed the XL Energy Center. Have you ever like tuned in and watched closely to that tournament, Steven?
So it's on and off. When I was working at the Hockey News, I know Ryan Kennedy and I used to watch it in the office. I would say it had nothing to do with his high school play that really turned people on to him. It was actually his USHL play. That's really where he woke up. And that's where he said he specifically wanted to become like a pro hockey player. That was what made him decide that over trying to pursue football, which obviously could make probably a bit more money playing football if you're a good quarterback. But with him, it just the high school tournament definitely didn't hurt him and getting that national exposure. I think when I think of that tournament, I just think of the hair and all the videos of the player's hair and that being a huge talking point because some of the hockey is actually pretty bad, but the crowds are awesome. And I love that that's such a cool event because we don't get like high school sports in the same way that in Canada specifically, we don't get high school sports the way that like high school football is. So when there's a hockey element to it in Minnesota, I think that's pretty cool.
We've got some viewers in the comments. Willie Stiles, I know you're one of them. Let us know. Is Minnesota high school hockey bigger than college or high school football in Texas? I want to know that. But jumping ahead, Steven, there's a couple of guys, actually a few guys on the Chicago Blackhawks. We just talked with Mario Tirabassi about this, and I noted that all 5 of their guys going down to pick 98 were above 6 feet tall, and this was kind of a theme throughout the first round. How much did size and height kind of play a factor this year?
I think because there weren't a ton of like super skilled guys you were going to find late in the first round, the teams were electing to go for size. And I think that's like, you look at the fact that not a single defenseman under 6 foot was drafted. So part of that you can look at that and say, okay, there's no can't miss prospects at 5'10", 5'11". Sure, okay, that's fine. You see Adam Bannock following, LJ Mooney going to Montreal, things like that. And also shout out to the Brantford Bulldogs drafting Adam Bannock at 5'7", and then the 7-foot guy today. Like, I love it. That's amazing. Really odd draft, I'd say. But that's the import draft. You're just kind of like hoping something works out with him. Or with the kind of the way that you look at these teams, like Philadelphia was drafting a lot of big guys. Teams were just looking for size, and because if there's one thing you can't teach, obviously it's size. I know it's super cliche at this point, but if you're not sold on a mid-sized player, just go for the bigger player. That guy might turn out to be a fourth-line player, and that's better than nothing.
Let's touch on that just for a second. Alexander Karmenov from Russia, plays at a prep school in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. He's committed to Penn State. 7 foot. 273 pounds is what he's listed at right here on Elite Prospects. Colton said before, he sent a text to Jeff Merrick saying, has this ever been seen? Has a player of this size and stature ever even been seen in the OHL?
No, I don't expect him to play in the OHL either. I don't. Here's the thing about him. He's 7 foot. He's really fun, but it's a novelty type situation here where you look at him and he's like, he can't skate at all. Like, he's very slow, barely moves. And so I really kind of find it interesting that they drafted him, but it's a third import pick. We get that extra import pick this year. Like, why not? Who knows what happens? But I do not expect him to. If a team drafts him, it's for the meme factor in the 7th round in the NHL. But hey, it's a cool story, right?
Yeah, cool story, I guess. But that might be all it lives up to be.
Yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. But like, you look at it, it's like we haven't had. You look at all the 6'8", 6'9" goalies that have kind of played all these different levels, and none of them have turned out to be anything. Like, still surprised we haven't seen a big goalie, but a big defenseman, like, that's tough. Like, you're gonna get a guy who's gonna just blast. Like LJ Mooney going around him would make him look silly.
Yeah.
What did you make of? And I'm gonna butcher his name, but Tynas Luke Cobbler, Toronto Maple Leafs draft pick. What did you make of him getting selected?
I knew a lot of teams looked at him as a potential 3rd-round pick, so taking him in the 2nd-round pick was interesting, but they probably knew they were going to be able to get Tyler Hopkins with the next pick, because that's one that I knew they were very interested in. That's one who I mocked them to at number 64. So I think in that case, they're looking at a guy that some other teams were interested in because of his size, and he likes playing a really good two-way game. So definitely an interesting pick, but not someone I would have thought would have gone as early as he did.
We've got a question coming in here from Randy in the chat asking, why did Cameron Schmidt fall so far down the line?
5'8". That's it. His size. And a lot of skill, but yeah, you see the jersey behind Colton there. There's not many guys that can play like Logan Stankoven. That's a very unusual thing. Now, Schmidt, I'd say first-round talent, and he does play with a bit more tenacity, but doing that against WHL guys is a different story than doing it against NHL guys. So, he fell for that reason really only, but hey, solid pick, I think, still anyways.
What did you make of Vyacheslav Nestrasil getting picked up there? Because I like him. I thought he was good in the USHL. Another player there, of course, for the Blackhawks, who seemed to have a good draft, obviously with Frondell and West too. But what did you make of Nestrasil, and where do you kind of see his development going?
He's a big forward. He's very difficult to kind of contain on the rush, and I know a lot of scouts were looking at him as a first-round pick because he's started to really figure out how to use his size better as the season wore on, but he's not like this guy who's just going to knock everybody down. He does play with a lot of skill and some good speed. So that's the thing. There's a trend we're seeing with these bigger players who are a little more mobile and got better hands, and that's why Roger McLean brings up so much attention, or Caden Lidstrom last year, or Quentin Byfield a few years ago, where these are the guys that are they're so tough to contain because they come up with you that size, but they got the speed and the skill to make up for it. So I think that's a good pick, especially in a draft where there wasn't a ton of like sure things. You might as well try and take a chance.
So now that the draft is over, and I know that you've been vocal about this before, but do you see any player making an opening night roster?
Michael Misa is probably the best chance of it. Beyond that, I don't know if anyone will. Like Frondell, he wants to go back to Sweden regardless of what happens. Victor Eklund, same thing. They want to play together. Schaefer, like, probably could start in the NHL, but he needs to just play a lot of games. And I don't know if, like, tonight he's playing. That's pretty awesome. He's going to be playing in the the training camp game. I'm going to miss it, go-kart racing, but hopefully it works out for him. But with Schaefer, like, he'd probably be in the NHL for sure if he wasn't injured all year. So I think realistically, Misa's probably the only guy I think goes to the NHL. Like, I know, talk, like, I wondered about Martone earlier in the year, but there's still a lot of interest in him potentially going the college route. And I know a lot of teams wanted him to focus on developing his skating next year. So as much as Martone could probably play at Philly, I don't see a benefit in it.
Now, do you think any guys like Matthew Schaefer or some of the top guys, maybe Dainoué, maybe not Dainoué, I think he's still got a little bit of developing to do, but do you think any of them maybe get their games and then get sent down?
Yeah, I think so. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Schaefer's playing at least the NHL, the home opener. Like, you want to show off that first overall pick, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Then you look at Misa probably, because again, Misa could be in the NHL, and I don't know if that'd be a bad thing for him, because if he doesn't go to a high end college, he's got nothing to prove back in Saginaw anymore. Like, his days in Saginaw should be over. Then there's Martone, like, maybe for a couple of games, because I think they can handle that physicality, but I'd rather him focus on just working on his skating a bit more. So I'd say we can probably get a few guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if we even get some kind of off the board guy that shows up and plays a few games. But I don't think anyone thought Jet Luchenko would have started the year in the NHL. But again, that's kind of the beauty of all this.
There was a conversation on Morning Cup of Hockey yesterday, or the day before, I think, and I'm sure you saw it, but I just want your opinion on it. But about Matthew Schaefer going the NCAA route, is that something you think would benefit him, or do you find because of the limited games, it would be just better for him to get as many games under his belt in the OHL season next year?
Like, I think a lot of this is, I feel like that wouldn't be a bit more of an overreaction, because it would be tougher competition, sure, but like, we've seen players develop no problem in the CHL for decades. It's not like all of a sudden the OHL sucks as development route. So I think for him, I'd rather see him play 60 plus games, go to the World Juniors, kind of be dominant, probably finish the year at the World Championship type thing, and go from there. So I'd rather see him just get all that game action that he missed out. And you just don't get that in the NCAA, because from a physical element, I don't think that's a problem. Like, when a lot of those guys that go to the NCAA, it's to go bulk up a bit more and spend more time in the weight room. But like, I don't think Schaefer needs that. That's not going to be an issue for him.
Do you think if Schaefer makes that World Championship team, say he does come the end of the season, do you think he would play the same kind of role that Martone did as like the extra player? Like, Martone obviously the forward, Schaefer the defense, but do you think Schaefer would play the seventh guy, or would he be up in the lineup a little bit?
It's so tough to tell, because we just obviously the lineup could change completely. But one thing I'll say is that typically after an Olympic year, the top players definitely don't show up to the World Championship. That's kind of more of a down year. So I feel like that could be an opportunity for him to play a bit more. But it's truly hard to say, because Hockey Canada has always liked to bring guys who were draft eligibles to the tournament. And I know Schaefer was definitely in the running had he been healthy. But on the other case, it's like we don't really see those draft minus or draft plus one guys who've already been selected but didn't play in the NHL. We don't typically see them do a lot. So it's kind of, there's no clear route, but it's honestly, I don't think they would know until they show up to the tournament itself.
Fair. Something that I wanted to touch on, Stephen, was the James Hagens thing. I know that a lot of people were saying, Long Island, he would be a perfect fit there, but it obviously didn't happen. Personally, I think the second best fit is right where he landed in Boston. He obviously played college in Boston. What do you think of that?
Yeah, like Boston needs more center depth, and they took Dean Letourneau last year, but those are very different players. I also say for Islanders fans, it's like you still got Kashawn Aitchison and Victor Eklund, two top 10 prospects in my opinion. So I'd say they did very well in the draft, no matter what. They were number one on my my draft grades board. But I think with Hagens, it's you look at him and he could be a number one center in the NHL. He's underrated, 100%. So I think that's a good fit. Like any pick after 4, they felt like a team was going to get a good value out of him. So I'd say they worked out pretty well.
Was there a reason Eklund fell to where he did, do you think?
His size, 5'11".
Okay.
Not very tough to push off the puck around the board. So I think the size definitely didn't help him there.
Yeah. Randy wants to know if you think Zane Parekh will play with the Flames this coming season.
He's another guy where I wouldn't mind him playing, just like I don't. He's in a tough spot where he signed his NHL entry level contract. Like, he probably shouldn't go back to the OHL after all the numbers he put up, but Saganow's not going to be as good this year. So I think I'll have an opportunity to still be a leading role in that team and do so much. So I'm not 100% convinced either way. I want to see what he can do in training camp, but I don't think he's got anything left to prove in the OHL. It's just whether or not throwing him into the NHL as a 19-year-old is the right move. I don't know.
Yeah, I get that. You wrote an article about winners and losers. Why don't you kind of tell our viewers a little bit about that? Who kind of won the draft, do you think? Who had? I mean, you didn't write a winners and losers, but you wrote a rankings essentially. Who do you feel like had the best draft?
The Islanders for sure. You look at just so much value all over the place. What else? You look at San Jose, obviously did really well. Michael Misa, and it kept going deep. Not Pittsburgh. I liked Philadelphia a lot. I thought they had a fantastic draft. So, like, it's a lot of the teams that had a lot of those early picks, obviously, that would be up there, but you're trying to get that value out there as much as you can. And, so the Islanders for sure is great. I think one team at Florida didn't do much in the draft because they barely had any picks. Edmonton, I don't know if any of those guys are going to be NHL players. Sorry, Colton. It is what it is.
Josh Ravensbergen obviously went to San Jose, but Pyotr Andreanov kind of was, the first goalie taken. Was that a shock to you?
There were rumors for a couple of days that he was going to be the first goalie taken over Ravensbergen. And I think part of it was when teams actually got to tell how big he was in real life. Because there was rumors of 6 foot, rumors of 5'11", 6'2", but it is 6'2", and actually not far off of 6'3". So he grew this year. And then you look at how quick he is and how well he moves around the net. Like, I get it that he's a first-round pick. So in a year where there was not a ton of high-end talent, go out there and take a goalie. Why not?
Steven, we touched on LJ Mooney, obviously got drafted by Montreal this year. I know he's not the biggest guy, and that's kind of what Montreal needs, is a bigger guy. But they have one smaller guy who's doing all right. He's had himself an all right year. Do you think he could kind of model a game of Cole Caulfield in a way?
I'd say they're different players. I think with Caulfield's more of a shooter, Mooney's more of a goal or a passer. But I really like just every time I watch Mooney play, I notice that he's just been one of the better players. Even when he played a year up with the NTDP, I thought he looked really good there. So I from Montreal at the time they drafted him, I thought was really smart because he's got all this talent, but he's got to bulk up. And he will at college. His cousin Logan Cooley got a little stronger when he went to college too. So you kind of hope that that's what happens. And I hope we start calling him Little John. I know he got drafted as John, but LJ stands for Little John, man. That's why I wanted them to say that at the draft.
Yeah, I was actually going down Montreal's draft list, and I saw I saw John Mooney, and to me, I've always known him, like throughout the Pittsburgh Penguins elite, he always was LJ Mooney. So I looked and I was like, ah. And then I read something. I was like, oh, it was LJ Mooney that they drafted. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Like John is his actual name, but he went by LJ with his dad being also John. So apparently they also call him LJ, but it's Large John. That's what the U.S. our guy told me last year.
Nice.
Steven, who was your favorite prospect taken in the draft?
Brady Martin.
Yeah.
Brady Martin, easy peasy.
Yeah.
Love him. Kashawn Aitchison's another guy I really like. And I'd say Mooney's kind of not too far off of that too. Another guy that just I like the pure skill and impresses me every time I watch him.
How long do you think until Brady Martin is in Nashville's lineup?
Give him 1 year. One more year of either junior or college, and then I think he'll be in the NHL shortly after that, and probably a second line role to start. But I can't. I would love to see that.
Brady Martin, he's going down to Nashville. He's going to be playing, well, not playing alongside, but in a few years, if he cracks the roster, he'll be playing alongside a guy that I got to watch pretty closely here in Halifax, Zach Leroux, who is very fiery. He's a pretty fiery player. Martin plays the same kind of style. How fun do you think it'll be for Predators fans to watch them in a few years?
Chaos, man, chaos. I love watching Zach Leroux as a prospect and watching him up close. I was taking photos on a Marlies game where he scored a goal and he like pointed directly at me, and it was like I'm taking pictures and I look afterwards, completely out of focus. So that sucks. But it turns out he's been a pretty good hockey player ever since, and I love it. Like, he's a guy that he takes no prisoners out there. And Brady Martin, that work ethic, like, he'll probably be on the penalty kill. He'll do so many things. Like, that's how you build an identity of being a tough team to play against. And I know people say Brady Martin's not very big. It's like, so what? Brady Martin hits like the harder than anybody in the draft class. Like, he doesn't need to be 6'4".
I agree with that statement.
We touched on this last time, Stephen. We were talking about Brady Martin. Did you get to, obviously you probably saw all of the draft celebrations that his family had going on. How special do you think it is, or it was, for him to have his whole family there instead of being in the draft where maybe only a select few would have been there?
That was so cool. And like, I got to say, when they had the tractor with the lift on it with the screen up high, like, given my wife's family's a farm family, I looked at it, I'm like, yep. First off, I know exactly what piece of machinery that is. And yes, I understand that you sometimes got to go redneck to make it work. And I thought that was great. So the story that Jeff Merrick always talked about on his show was how, like, Brady Martin, when he got drafted to the Sioux, was like, he wanted to bring his cow with him and trying to find a place that would let him bring a cow to the billet home. I'm like, the more you hear it, the more Brady Martin it sounds. It's great. I love it. And I was in Edmonton for the Hlinka Gretzky, and he grew up an Oilers fan. And watching him, after I interviewed him, he walked around the Oilers Hall of Fame and looked at all the stuff they had there. And I kind of made it a meme to say Ty Conklin was the greatest Edmonton Oiler of all time. And he looked at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? We went, because there was a Ty Conklin mask, so I had to go point that out. There was a couple of other really cool things there, and it was fun watching him there. And he's just a good guy. I remember the CHL USA series, he was at, like, people were asked, like, who's the most fun guy, who's the most talkative guy off the ice, and they say Brady Martin. Was like, almost everyone said Brady Martin is, like, got the best personality. So the fact that he missed the draft to go work on his farm is the most Brady Martin thing possible. But it didn't seem to matter. He flew it to Nashville shortly after, so he's there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Missed the draft, but he can't miss Dove Camp. No question about it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
They playing games for their dev camp in Nashville? Are they gonna showcase some stuff of him, you think?
He was on the ice. I saw him do some battle drills. I don't know if there's any scrimmages, but I'll be at Toronto's dev camp this week, so I'm excited to see. I actually haven't looked at their list, other than they have a bunch of goalies I've never heard of before.
Fun stuff. Well, Stephen, I think that does it from me. What about you, Dave?
Well, all I have to say, Stephen, is I hope you are the first person crossing the finish line after the checkered flag tonight. So good luck to you.
I'm looking forward to it, man. It's been good. And my dad and I came first and second in our first race together. And then last race, we came third and fourth. So we're hoping to stay connected again. And hopefully I'm the one winning and he doesn't beat me.
Yes, sir. Well, enjoy the rest of the weekend and enjoy that sun, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Take care.
Thank you, Stephen.
Well, Colton, great episode. Stephen always coming on, bringing the best insight in the game, some prospects, some NHL draft, everything in between. But before we wrap up, what do you got cooking for the rest of the week? Anything special over there on your side?
For the show? We can...
No, just whatever you got cooking the rest of the week. What's going on in Colton Davies' life?
Not a lot. We're just grinding over a daily Faceoff, getting all the free agency stories up, getting all the graphics up. That's about it.
Let everyone know where they can find your stuff.
You can find all my work at blazerhockey.com, where I write for the Kamloops Blazers, and then you can also find all my graphics work and social media work that I do for Daily Faceoff over on Daily Faceoff's Instagram and Twitter. I used to write for Daily Faceoff, but my role has now changed, so I'm doing a few more other things nowadays. So, but yeah, you can check out all my work there. You know what? Tomorrow we got a pretty big one tomorrow for you guys. We got United States Hockey League Commissioner Glenn Heffernan coming on. Glenn's going to join us, talk about the USHL. We're going to dive into some of the USHL had a number of players selected in the draft over the weekend. So we'll dive into that with Glenn, and we'll just talk about kind of the whole, what's kind of happening in the NCAA and CHL world and how it affects the USHL moving forward and what Glenn's plans are with the league. So really looking forward to getting Glenn on. And then Friday, we got former NHLer Nate Thompson coming on the show. So be sure to come in and check that one out. We'll be talking about Nate's career in the WHL, as well as his post career and what he's been doing in the media square. He runs his own podcast nowadays, so he's a busy man. But yeah, Glenn Heffernan and Nate Thompson on the show for tomorrow and Friday. Other than that, I think in the next couple of weeks we'll start kind of dwindling down to two shows a week as we kind of just get into summer. But still lots of guests to come on, and I think it'll be fun to kind of just get some other people on throughout the summer. But we'll obviously pick back up once the regular season gets going again.
Yeah, before we wrap things up, we are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to wrap the show up, talk a little bit about some more prospects and stuff that Colton and I found interesting. We'll be right back.
Looking for a new way to quench your thirst? Game Day Tarps is now an official Quench affiliate. Head on over to quench.ca/GameDayTarpsPodcast and use our code GameDayTarpsPodcast, all caps, all one word, for 15% off your total order. Stay cool this summer with the #1 sports drink on the market. Stay quenched.
Is the off-season bumming you out?
Yeah.
Do you wish you had more hockey content to consume?
Yeah.
Well, head on over to patreon.com/GameDayTarps and check out all the exclusive content we have to offer. Behind the scenes videos, in-depth analysis, and so much more. Select a membership tier and enjoy the content made only for you. Only at patreon.com/GameDayTarps.
Fellas, thank you for tuning in once again. But before we head out, just like that said, go over to quench.com, grab yourself one of the best sports drinks on the market, and use our code GameDayTarpsPodcast for 15% off. And then head over to our Patreon and check that out, see if that's up your alley. But Colton, before we head out, I just wanted to touch on the CHL import draft again. There was one thing that caught both of our eyes. There was another Stankoven, the jersey up above your head there.
Mm-hmm.
Matej Stankoven.
Yeah, Slovakian forward, taken by Sherbrooke, I believe it was. So
yeah, it was in the Q League. You'll have to ask Stank if there's any relation there. Definitely not.
No, there definitely isn't, but I'll be sure to text him and ask him. Hey, before we sign off, big shout out to Logan Stankoven, friend of the show, friend of the program, signing his 8-year, $48 million extension with Carolina. So big shout out to the kid, and congratulations to him, and pretty exciting to see what he's able to do. Oh, awesome. Good job, Bill. You and Willie are going to kill it.
No, I think Bill said you're going to be there at Willie's apartment.
Oh, I am? All right, sounds good. I'll be there.
One more question that Willie popped in, forgot to pop it up when Steven was on. He wanted to know who Steven thought was going to win the World Juniors. Willie, I don't know what kind of question you're asking 3 Canadians here, but it's Canada.
Definitely Sweden. But yeah, Canada.
It's going to be a gold medal rematch of a couple years ago, Canada, USA. This time on American home soil in Minnesota, the state of hockey. I think it'll be good.
Absolutely. But yeah, again, guys, tomorrow, Glenn Heffernan from the USHL, and Friday, Nate Thompson, former NHLer, joining the show. And I think that about does it for today.
Yes, sir. We'll see you guys back here, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, right here on GDT Live.